conversations, and some hard truths. Welcome to The Quiet Professional.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Quiet Professional. Today is my fourth episode jointly with the Edmonton Police Service, and we're going to be talking about protests and public disorder. I've got two guests on here, and we're doing it through a slightly different forum. This is my usual Zoom forum. The last few with the EPS have been in person, so it might look and sound a little bit different, but yeah, this is the fourth episode. So excited to have my two guests here. First up is Superintendent Lance Parker. Lance is a 23-year member of the Edmonton Police Service. He's worked across frontline and plainclothes operations. Several of his formative years were spent in joint operations with our federal police service, focused on gang and drug enforcement. Lance was later promoted to a duty officer position and responsible for management of all operational activities citywide during shift. Currently, he oversees two of our 6 patrol branches and has nearly 2 decades in our public safety unit, of which he currently serves as its executive officer. And second up, I got Sergeant Bill Countryman here. He's the real brains behind the operations. Yes. Bill is a 22-year member of the Edmonton Police Service. He's worked in both operational investigative capacities and is currently in the Disaster Emergency Operations Preparedness Section, or DOPS as it's more commonly known. Bill's role within DOPS is to support the EPS with logistical planning and training in support of major events, protests and rallies, and disaster response. The DOPS program encompasses EPS officers working within public safety unit, marine unit, search manager roles, and logistical support. So welcome to you both.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us, Nathan.
I will say this right off the top. Yeah, Bill, I mean, you do a crap load of work. It's second to none. Like, I don't know how you do that. Just with all the logistics, planning everything, coordinating people, like herding cats. It's a whole bunch of adults who can't manage their own schedules and own time. So you got to do all that for them too. So kudos to you.
And Billy, you do this all within hours. Usually we don't give you days to do this. You do this within hours. So my hat's off to you. So
I try my best on that. So yeah. I get that.
So yeah, I'm glad we can get you guys in here. You two probably have the most experience, most knowledge when it comes to a lot of the public safety unit operations. And I think this would be really good, really informative for the public to just kind of get a grasp of what exactly it is we're doing when we're out there, because we're dealing with everything from straight up protests, and sometimes those can get out of hand, to demonstrations, to all kinds of other events, even just big sporting events and concerts. So it's nice to educate people on just what we do. One of the things I wanted to start with, and maybe I'll throw it to you, Lance, just to kind of start talking about this. When we talk public safety unit, can you explain some of the things that we do, some of the things we don't do? So maybe touch on some of the misconceptions about the work that we handle, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds good. And yeah, like I'll start, like you said, I think, and Billy's been around long enough, and yourself too, Nathan, within that world, but our role in public safety unit has changed dramatically since I started 18 years ago in the unit. I mean, when I started, we got deployed to the G20 in Toronto for, I think it was 14 or 17 day deployment. And then when we were back here, we weren't used all that often. And when we were used, we hid in vans, and we were just the emergency push button. When something was going really bad, they pressed the big red button, and then we'd come out. So we've had to really reshape what public safety unit does. And I think it's probably one of the most professional units within North America, the way we operate now, the way we deal with events, regardless if they're, like you said, a concert event, a major sporting event, protests, demonstrations. The product that we put out there now, I think, is one of the best products that we could put out, professional. Mm-hmm. Our main goal is public safety. That truly is why we're there, is to maintain public safety. It looks different depending on what were attending. So for instance, the Oiler playoff games, our public safety units out there, and it's just in order to make sure the crowd can enjoy the event, enjoy the celebrations after the event, and then get home in a safe manner, right? That truly is what our role is when you see our members out there. Our members are now taught to, or when I first started, public safety unit didn't engage with the public unless it truly was to do some action based on the action that was done towards the public or police. We had to be the reaction. We're retraining our members like, no, it's all right to smile and it's all right to talk to people. And like, we're there as part of the crowd, as part of what's going on. We're just a piece of that. We're a part of that. But we just need to have engagement with them. So the public understands that we're not there as I don't know how to say this properly, but as a tool of force. But we're there just to truly to make it a safe environment for everyone to enjoy, regardless of what your opinions might be on whatever matters there. We're neutral. We're just there to make sure whatever's happening happens safely.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Bill, if you want to add any more, but
Yeah, like from my standpoint, we are that proportionate response mechanism within the service. So again, it's a layered approach when we're looking at these events and supporting these events. And again, different layers. It's like an onion, right? So it's the engagement at the ground level with our patrol members, and then there's extra duty members that could be assigned. There could be some of our specialized areas like specialized support with our disruption team supporting these events, and we're augmenting that with public safety members in order to kind of build in those contingencies, but as well, again, like the boss said there, provide that safe environment to the citizens and the people attending these events, whether it's a major event or if it's a political rally or protest.
Do you think like some of the, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the biggest misconception nowadays is that when PSU is deployed that, oh, here comes the force, right? Mm-hmm. Here comes the uses of force. Here comes like something's going to happen. But I think over the years, as we deploy more and more in the way we deal with these events, we're starting to get rid of that stigmatism. We're not deploying to deploy immediate use of force, right? We will react when we have to react. We're not deploying just to be that immediate force that a lot of the public, well, not a lot of the public, will say some of the public thinks that we are, and that's not what we're about in PSUs.
So our main function comes down to crowd management. That's how I've always understood it since I've been in, and that was 2016. So since then, it's been talking a lot more about crowd management rather than just calling it the riot team.
Correct. And one of the biggest events that first one I was in charge of was when Greta Thunberg came here and spoke in regards to the environment. And that event, I think, had 17,000 attendees. Like, it was massive. And we had our PSU teams deployed. I think we had MBT, our mountain bike teams, CMTs. That was a phenomenal event. And I always measure success by afterwards. And you look at like the Black Lives Matter, the Defund the Police movement, the Greta Thunberg, the Yellow Vest movements, Jericho, all of the media after was not about police, right? It was about the event. And that's how I measure success, is that the aftermath is always about the event and not about our police action. So I think that speaks volumes to the professionalism we have in PSU now and how PSU operates today. So,
do people give enough credit, do you think, to the deterrent role that is played by PSU being out there? So sometimes I hear criticisms of the number of people we might have, but then you got to think, I think some of the stuff that gets missed into discussions is how many people we're actually policing and how few police officers we actually do have. Like, if we truly need to move a crowd, that's difficult. So when things devolve or, start breaking down, it's like that goes quick. But if we can be on the preventative side, then I think that's one of the bigger roles that we play, just by being out there and being visible.
Yeah, like from my standpoint, Nathan, is when we're looking at these major events, is having the appropriate means if you do have to enact those types of secondary support systems, if you have to activate any kind of line movements, if you have to activate any type of movement through the crowd, when you go on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you don't have the appropriate resourcing and you don't have the appropriate training, that's usually when a lot of these events they spin out of control, they go a little bit sideways, and it takes a lot more effort and a lot more means in order to basically suppress that event in the sense of bringing it back under control, or having the appropriate resources on site to deal with that event and have that understanding and the professionalism behind that. So,
Mhm.
And I think we've come a long way since 2009 NHL playoff run, right? Like, what happened in that year compared to what's happened in the last, 3 or 4 years we've had playoff runs here. Like, we've taken the lessons we've learned from those in 2009 and we've implemented, and every year, because of what happens around the world, like in Vancouver with the festival there where the car went and killed and hurt just people at a festival. So we're always thinking, okay, well, now we got to think about vehicle attacks now. And I think we're so far ahead of that game that you look at the last few years and how smoothly the playoff runs have been for the general public and how safe it's been for the general public to attend these large events. I think it, like Billy says, we look at the deployments, we look at the event, and I think, like I said, we've come a long way from where we were when I first started in the units.
Yeah. You mentioned it just kind of like we pay attention to some of the world events. I guess that kind of brings us to this question. Who do we look to for training, and who do we look maybe up to? Who comes and works with us and looks up to us? Can you talk a bit about the partners we have out there, and who has that experience that we kind of generally will take from, and how do we pass it on?
Yeah. So again, this kind of world, it's kind of ever evolving. Again, learning from stuff that's happening down in the States, stuff that's happened overseas, especially like in Europe, with a lot of the unrest in Germany and France. But as well, it's the working groups across Canada. Both the boss and I sit on our subcommittee for the national working group for the CACP. And there's a lot of great conversations because how things are dealt with in certain provinces or certain cities or certain types of zones within Canada can vary as far as like a standardized approach with that. But when it comes down to the training, it's reaching out to other organizations across Canada, as well as some of the professional organizations in kind of North America, like our specialty munitions side of the house. We do our kind of baseline instructor training through the National Tactical Officers Association. But then when you look back into Canada, we do some sub-training with like the RCMP. We do send members to assess other courses with the RCMP Winnipeg, Vancouver. We just hosted a course with our TAC Advisor course in which we brought in, it was about 18 members from across Western Canada, from Calgary, Vancouver, West Van, Saanich, Victoria, Winnipeg, as well as our own EPS members. And it brought everybody in the room talking about the needs and basically the gaps in each of the programs and how they can expand, as well as we open up those programs to some of our provincial partners to get those experiences and exposures to them, to give them a better understanding to build their programs. From my office standpoint, again, we work with our major event and festival and events civics committee. So again, dealing with the playoffs, all of our major events and festivals throughout the city, from Heritage Days down to Churchill Square events, like Symphony in the Square and all that kind of stuff. And it's trying to explain to some of our partnerships and some of the groups we work with the experiences we have, and as well provide the learnings of what we've learned as police, but provide them some insight and some options of when they're trying to plan these events and understand the capabilities, not just of policing, but bringing in other concepts of like, did you assess this with your ingress plans? Did you are you looking at this as a ticketed event, a non-ticketed event? Again, you're going to bring in different types of people, talking about the different types of people and the personalities within those groups. And I know you're part of those discussions, working within PSU over the years and within the courses, but taking bits and parts of kind of courses that we've attended, and again, benchmarking to what we have, and I think the boss from the time he's been in PSU to where I've been now in PSU, the educational access to different programs and again, learning from lessons learned in different cities. I think that's a huge concept. With that, there's not really a standardized model, unfortunately, and I think we're just adapting around what we're seeing in the world.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, just before you jump in, Lance, just one of the things that surprised me in some of the discussions, I think it was around the Ottawa deployment, was that we didn't have so much communication across Canada. And when we started working with other services across the nation, there was a lot of differences in how things are just run, how the structure of things existed, some of the line movements, like whatever it might be. Some people deploy with tactical teams, some don't. Like, I was kind of surprised by that. And that wasn't that long ago. But I know that's something that you and you guys both have been kind of working on with these committees. But I just thought it was kind of surprising. Like, even up until recently, it takes like a lot of these big events to happen before real change occurs. So,
Yeah, and I agree in everything Billy said. Like, Ottawa is a prime example of Billy's talents there. Like, we had to put together within hours to have a whole team on a plane and flying out to Ottawa. And again, that speaks volumes to Billy and his team there for building that. But yeah, we're trying to get, because I noticed that when I went to the G20 in Toronto there in, when was that, 2009? And just we were working with another team and it was completely different, like completely different. The movements, line movements, even what level of dress they were wearing, right? Like,
yeah,
it was a massive difference. So that's why we've kind of got this committee. We speak, and I think our relationship is a lot stronger just within Alberta than it ever has been. Billy and I sit on a weekly meeting, telephone meeting with Calgary and the RCMP, just to make sure that we're on the same page as a province. We needed the RCMP last year during our playoff run, and they deployed the last 2 rounds, right, Billy, with us, I think, last 2 rounds. And
Yeah.
they helped us out immensely with manpower and resources. And it was so nice as a commander that they just blended in with the EPS. We gave them the whole west side and they just did it, and it was done professional. Movements were the same. They could just amalgamate with the EPS and be one team. And we talk about these large events, and I'm not saying we haven't had these large events before, but they just seem to be getting bigger and bigger. Like, you're talking like the Petroleum Conference in Calgary. You're talking about G7 in Banff. You're talking about FIFA now next year. Like, they need massive amount of resources. So we have to be able to go there and be able to be on the same standard in the way we deploy and what we're wearing and how we actually deploy. And I think that's where we're going to hopefully one day be standardized across Canada so that whoever needs us, we can just go and get plugged in, right? Plug and play. That's the whole goal, is that we come as a self-contained unit and we can just plug and play.
And I think being on the national subcommittee, it's one of the big components I find is just understanding what type of capabilities each of the services have. In Ontario, they utilize a hub model. So if they have something that's happening in Mississauga and they need more resources, they can rely on all these artery systems of other services with their public safety units to support that. And again, now that we're looking at it nationally, that how we deploy as our CMT group versus how the Montreal Police Service deploys their members, and the numbers and the size of their teams and how they talk about that, what kind of tactics they have, what kind of line tactics, how do they deploy with their medics, how do they deploy with their munitions people, what types of equipment, what levels of dress, do they have ROEs, like all those types of components. So there's a lot of things on a national basis. After Ottawa, it brought a lot of people to the table. And again, it's a work in progress based on that. But I think it gives us a greater understanding across Canada if we do have a major event like that, who we can access.
Yeah, I think with this committee, the biggest thing, and Bill, you can speak to this too, is just the communication. Because prior there was kind of a lack of communication, and now every time there's a major event, we're contacted and we're prepared for possibly coming to our city. The best example of this was the Eritrean riot we had in 2023, August 2023. We met in Red Deer with Calgary. What was it, a couple of days after that event? Yeah. They were having an Eritrean event the weekend after. They had no idea what was coming their way. And we told them, and we explained what we went through. We had videos. We showed them the videos, and it helped them prepare for what, the event that took place in Calgary after that. And that communication, I don't think, was there for the longest time in PSU because we kind of kept our siloed. We kept to ourselves, right? At one point, I can't remember when, we did train with the RCMP, and we observed Calgary training in Penhold, but we got away from that, and we just got to get that back.
It always comes down to communication. That's everything. Whether it's military, law enforcement, you have a breakdown of communication, you're either not learning or you're not doing the job properly.
Correct.
Yeah. I want to talk a bit about some of the numbers of protests or events that we do go to. Lance, you got a flash of the bat signals going off in your office. We'll cut your video out for this.
There we go. It's calm down now.
Wondering about the numbers of protests and things that we might go to. So maybe, Billy, you might have the most relevant numbers on that, recent numbers. I'm just wondering, over the course of a year, what does it look like for our deployment? So that's EPS. How many do we go to? And if you can talk about, do we classify them as anything, whether it's considered a protest or a demonstration? Like, do we have definitions for these things?
Yeah, so I'm just pulling it up here just on my other laptop. Just give me one sec here. So I'll just kind of touch on some of the stuff from 2024 there. So when we're looking at like protests and rallies, we kind of look at it, our overall PSU response. Like, how many times are we activating a PSU response of putting boots on the ground? And again, it's growing exponential over the years. The boss was part of PSU when we would only get deployed for, again, those major events or playoffs. But outside of that, we really didn't have a protest or rally lens happening. The odd time you'd have something pop up, but there wasn't anything. And then around 2016, 17, we started to see some, again, rise in kind of motivation with people within the protest realm. We're starting to see some activity in Eastern Canada. We moved towards like 2019 with Yellow Vest, moving into the COVID protests, again, moving to Black Lives Matter, moving into some of our Indigenous protests and stuff from the West Coast with the Wet'suwet'en. Now, again, we've seen an increase over the last 2 years there with our Palestinian events, which were occurring every weekend. And it's sporadic with the number of times we would deploy versus not deploying. So when I'm looking at kind of overall physical deployments for public safety unit in 2024, we're looking at roughly about 32 deployments. Some of those, again, I'll just give you a rough breakdown, just scrolling through some of my search manager stuff here. Apologize. But yeah, like going back into 2024, again, we're looking at stuff like the Eritrean event, which was another smaller event. And then we had a larger event, which was a spinoff from the 2023 Eritrean event in August, which we declared basically two riots on the same day. But it was a spin-off event, and making sure we have adequate resources. We've had Palestinian protests. We've had supporting the Indian High Counselor when they attended. We have dignitary visits where we support with crowd management around when the PM comes, or again, people of certain levels in the federal government where the RCMP requests mutual aid requests within our area. Axe the tax type protests. We've had stuff from other national governments of people attending, like from Poland, the consulate people. So again, we look at the unrest that's happening in those countries, but as well, we look at the unrest, how it could affect things in Edmonton. A lot of our events they're split kind of almost like 50-50. If the Oilers keep going to round 4, it's really good, right? But again, if we only make it to round 1, we're probably going to have a higher number of protest events, just to kind of augment what those numbers are on a yearly basis.
Well, I think one of the interesting points on that is I would say most of the public doesn't realize that we deploy for half of these things. Just some guy coming in from Poland or India, it's like, why would we deploy police for that? But they don't have that bigger picture on the geopolitical side of things. So they don't realize that we're deploying members, and these are members that are in patrol or fill different functions. So they're doing this in addition to their normal job. So you're not, you're taking time away from your family, rest. Like some of these deployment too, when you talk about the Palestinian events, the convoy stuff from COVID, these were like every single weekend. Sometimes there's multiple events in a week. So people are getting called out for this all the time. I mean, it's tiring, it's taxing. So,
and I think a lot of the general public there don't realize the fact that, public order is an additional support system. But if we're looking at supporting these events with operational working resources, that means we don't have operational working resources to support just regular run-of-the-mill general operations. And the boss could probably speak to this concerning with our Eritrean event, where that event had the cascade effect of affecting the whole city's operational response for the day, because it wasn't just PSU resource, it was divisional members that were deployed in our basic emergency crowd control gear to support as a force multiplier, which drastically affected all the other resources in the city, from patrol to tactical. Basically, if you could put on a helmet and hold a shield, you were probably going to be getting deployed to that event.
So prior to that, so speak about fatigue, Nathan. That's a great point. One of the best examples was when Black Lives Matter happened. That was a 14-hour long event. Same members. And it's one of the mistakes I made as a commander is I forgot about our MBT team. They rode for that entire time, and I never thought about giving them a break. So there's no food, no water. They just rode their bikes. And you look at how many kilometers we covered as the march went from downtown across the river, back downtown, back across the river. I can't remember the amount of loops we did, but we did quite a few loops. You talk about, Billy brings up the Eritrean riot. That event, initial deployment was at 7 a.m, Billy.
Yep.
And then and we thought, okay, we're going to build up our membership as the day went along. That was the original plan. Again, a failure on command staff, because we were looking at the resources and the availability of members and just fatigue. And we thought, we'll start off, we'll bring in more members, we'll start shifting in and out. And like Billy said, that was kind of 2 riots in one day, but that was a continuous event from 7 a.m. until 8 at night, 9 at night. We tried to give a break so members could just decompress for a few minutes. And in the middle of that, we had an emergency declared by a member that got stuck between both groups of an event that was 3 hours prior before the event was supposed to take place.
Yeah.
That not only put a strain on resourcing within the city of Edmonton, it actually shut down our CAD system. It shut down the emergency system in comms, because there was so many radio transmissions and people responding and vehicles going that the general public doesn't realize the impact that event had on their safety, even if they were nowhere near the actual event. If you were in the city of Edmonton, your safety was put at risk, because now that one event affected all of our emergency resources. EMS, fire, police, transit, everyone was affected.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I don't think the general public realizes. Just because you're not near the actual event, physical location, doesn't mean it's not affecting your possible safety.
Yeah, I think a lot of people seem to think it's out of sight, out of mind a little bit. You get stuck in that. Can you guys talk a bit about the cost associated with these deployments? So how much it costs, and if you can mention just generalities, who actually pays for this?
Boss, you start on that one?
Yeah, you go ahead.
So just over the years, it's been a exponential cost where, again, we have a baseline overtime that supports this, or if we have, for example, NHL playoffs, we have an unfunded liability for overtime in order to support the measures as well as the operational plan to support those deployments. But over the years, again, dealing with some of the protests, we've set up a protest cost center in order to capture those costs. And probably since I'm just going to look at one of the sheets here. Since 2020, our teams have only grown by 30%, but we've had almost an 8-time increase in overtime costs since 2020 because of recent protests. So it's grown exponential. Looking at between rallies versus major events, it's been identified as an issue. And at one point during 2024, we did have funding from the provincial government because they were seeing the strain that it was putting on. Because if you don't have the financial means, you won't have the resources to put out there and to draw from your operational means to support that. You're now basically stealing from Peter to give to Paul necessarily. And you're then putting your operational members at risk. So I'll let the boss cover off anything else on that.
Well, like you said, you're looking at, like, in patrol operations alone, we're short. Every day we're putting out overtime calls just because how short we are. So you look at events as simple as Billy's mentioned a few times, the NHL playoffs. Like, that is going 4 rounds the last few years, and that is such a strain on our members because members are doing their normal roles in operations, investigative roles, administrative roles, and then going out and doing this after until 11 o'clock at night, and then getting up the next morning and going back and doing their normal roles. So we talk about member fatigue. Again, I go back to Black Lives Matter. That was 14 hours of members standing on the front line and just being told horrible things. And for 14 hours, they stood and took that. And then we had to spool back up the next weekend for a possible another one. And how do you get through to the members mentally saying, okay, like, we're going to get through this again. It's going to be a tough haul because we know what to expect. But just like the mental pressure on our members is, yeah, like Billy says, it's all off the side of our desk. So it's a heavy lift. It truly is a heavy lift. But members love it, but it's still a heavy lift. So.
Well, I'm talking like costs in dollars and cents. We are going to talk about the individual impact here shortly. But the dollars and cents, and Billy, you were kind of mentioning, so the province has had to provide some money. When you talk about the Oilers games, like, is there a cost sharing in that at all? Or is that just the city pays for members, or does OEG or somebody else pay for members to be out there?
Yeah, so the way it works is on the physical footprints, OEG is supported with our extra duty detail resources. So again, mostly people in patrol uniforms supporting Rogers proper, the Moss Pit or Fan Pit area, and then as well Fan Park to the east of the location. So there is a deployment model for those, but it's a very minimal model based on the type of event. And again, I would prefer to have a larger amount of members as part of that EDD component because it does spill into that area outside of those footprints. Now, outside of the footprints, it's augmented through some of the divisions changing up their shift hours in order to support with operational resources. If it's mountain bike resources or beat members coming down or disruption members, dealing with, again, further engagements or public interactions on the LRT and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of that next layer of that response. And then kind of the final layer of that is allocating with your extra PSU resources for these events. And these events, we wanted to start off kind of as a gradual skill set of the deployment model, kind of going into this last year's playoffs and our first home games here. I think it was game 3, game 4. We were seeing the same volume of people we were seeing in round 4, game 6, game 7. And at that same time, we were managing a protest and rally down at the legislative grounds and basically cut resources from that because we weren't really having any issues down there and reallocated. When it comes back to a funding, paying it back, the footprints are paid by OEG or their group with that. Otherwise, the other operational expenses for this, it falls within an unfunded liability. At the end of the year, they look at it, and again, if there's leftover overtime in this area, so on and so forth, they go there. Sometimes the city supports with certain measures and cost sharing on that. I personally think there should be a greater emphasis put on the cost sharing between the city and then leveraging OEG. That's my opinion on this. We do a lot for that area, and the cost sharing is very limited.
Yeah.
Just to put a number to it, Nathan, like you look at the RCMP assisted us in the playoff run last year. If I'm correct, Bill, that was going to be like $1 million tab bill to the city, but the RCMP, like they have federal funding, so they just decide to pay that themselves. But that's just a snippet of the cost of these events.
Yeah.
I think I can't recall the number over top of the entire playoffs and stuff like that, but I think overtime wise, I think we're sitting just under $1 million.
Yeah, just under $1 million.
Yeah.
I know. I appreciate that. And I hope that the public really grasps just the amount of stuff that has to go into planning this and the amount of resources that are required. And I'll tell you right now, even when I'm out there, when you see the size of the crowd and how out of hand some people can get, and it can really spread when you're looking at the small amount of, or the small footprint of police that are out there, sometimes you're like, you guys aren't paying enough. We should be paying another $1 million, because if this goes sideways, you're going to wish you had all the resources in the world to stop some of this stuff. So,
and that's a good point. You look at the playoff run, I think it was this year, and we have a member who used to play in the CFL as a linebacker. So he was a very, very large man. And I remember being a commander and watching a little bit of a crowd crush happening. And I was watching the crowd lift him up and down off the ground. And I'm thinking, he's the biggest police officer we have here, and he's being moved like he's like air, like there's no weight to him. That's when you know you're in trouble, like you say, Nathan. Like, we could use another 100 officers, because if this crowd keeps going, we're in trouble.
Well, and on that, that's an event that people aren't even mad. They're not aggressing. They're not looking to destroy. That is just simply bodies bumping into each other and going in a general direction. And that's it. And you can barely manage that or even stop it at all. Now you get any size of crowd that is unruly, that's aggressive. I mean, it's going to take a lot of resources.
And it happens all over the world. And like you said, it's as simple as a crowd crush, right? People, with the one game, we had to actually shut down the venues, outside venues, because we were having crowd crush. And that takes more members than we had there to just solve that problem. Like you said, they weren't there. They weren't angry. It was a celebratory crowd. They were just looking to get into these venues to get a spot to watch a hockey game. But that caused a crowd crush, and we have to deal with that as police. So it happens all over the world, in concerts and festivals and sporting events. But I don't think the general public understands what police role is in that. Security's not going to be able to solve that problem.
Yeah, no. Can you guys talk about how we choose which events we're going to deploy to? Because if people are paying attention out there, obviously the most recent and most frequent would be a lot of the Palestinian events, but we're not out there with any substantial numbers at every single one of these things. There's picking and choosing. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we're looking at these events, we're pretty fortunate in the city here to have a really robust protest liaison team, our PLT team. And again, those people that work in that team, they have some great relationships with people and stakeholders within the community groups to determine kind of what the intent of their event's going to be, or the protest or the rally's going to be. And sometimes it doesn't even really affect a protest or rally, but for example, like Heritage Days, it's having them on the ground level to determine, we might see this type of event happening, or these two countries or areas are being a little bit contentious with what's happening in the world right now. They provide us a lot of insight and intel of, again, what kind of volume, what potential kind of numbers we may see, what type of counter protests based on kind of how they assess the risks of their events, as well as they provide us some some understanding of like, these are the resources available to support these events that are working operationally. The duty officer's aware. There's disruption teams or tracks that might support kind of as that next layered approach. Sometimes they'll make the request or have the conversations like, you know what, divisional members will deploy in their second or third watch with their basic emergency crowd control in case the duty officer has to access resources. And then if it looks a little bit more contentious and we, again, look at the risk associated to the overall event, we put out a situational awareness, or we might just go to a strictly an activation with just one of our 4 levels of response of how we build out our PSU teams.
Okay. And maybe I'll just put this out there so that people are aware. Sometimes, even though PLT is out there or our commanders and they're talking with these community groups, some of them don't always tell the full truth. They don't tell us where exactly they're going or how they're going to manage the people with them. Or we also get unexpected tag-alongs. So some other people might show up for that specific thing that they want to protest. Like they're all on the same page, but some decide, a more, we'll say, aggressive group shows up that isn't normally in there. And I guess a third one is sometimes we get where someone's protesting one thing and maybe they're going to get some attention, or someone knows that they're going to get attention, and a totally separate group involved in a totally separate matter shows up and tries to bite off some of that attention that maybe the media or politicians are giving them. So it's just for like an awareness piece for those who do go out there and wonder, just how we're managing it. There is an aspect that the other side is either playing ball or they're not playing ball, right? Like there is some give and take. There is some sharing there to make sure that people can exercise their rights safely.
Yeah, there's still communities that don't trust the police, right? We have to work on that. Like we truly have to work on building that relationship and strengthening that relationship. And I agree. A lot of these events that I've been in command of or been a part of have been truly peaceful, amazing events. Like the messaging that gets out there, but then, like you said, it's that group that kind of infiltrates within it that has a completely different agenda, and they want to make it all about the police and maybe whatever mandate or mission that they're trying to get across, which has nothing to do with the original event. And we see that more and more often.
Yeah. Maybe we'll kind of, just as we get toward the end of the time, I want to make sure we have some time to discuss this, but the individual impact. So talking about the officers, and if you have any examples of public that have come up to you and maybe express some concerns, not so much with the police, but just with the overall situation that's going on out there. Lance, you were mentioning about the BLM takeover of downtown and some of the stuff that was being said to members. I was present at this. I was there for the whole event, back and forth across the river multiple times, and then kind of ending up in the downtown core. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you saw from that, what you heard, and how members were maybe responding to it, or some of the emotions that were occurring after the event?
Yeah, you bet. And like that event, I think speaks to our professionalism. Like what we all went through that night for, I think it was 12 or 14 hours, was mentally straining on all our members. To be attacked, like verbally attacked for that many hours, is tough. I don't care if it's in a sport or if it's any kind of professional setting. To be attacked verbally for that many hours and to remain as professional as our Edmonton police officers did was unbelievable. Unbelievable. The one event that really brought it to light to me, other than that one, was the Eritrean riot. And we did a debrief afterwards. We've gotten better with mental health and just checking in on people. So we do debriefs now. And after the Eritrean riots, we held a debrief with everyone that was there because there were some mistakes made. And I own some as a commander on just the deployment model. But it's the first time in my career where I've heard a member saying that they were scared. And it was a patrol member that ended up in the middle of that crowd of 100 or 200 on both sides, and things being thrown from every direction they could turn, and to actually hear the words that they were scared. I've never heard that before in my career. but you can understand that we've never seen anything like that in Edmonton, right? So I get where those members are coming from, but we have to deal with that, right? And we did, and I think we did quite a unbelievable job that day. But to hear those words, I thought was new to me as a police officer, as a commander.
Mm.
And I don't know, Bill, if you want to add to that, but
Yeah, like my experience with that night, I was working as a munitions person, and when things went a little bit south after the grounds let go, again, people driving up the street, bodies hanging out of cars, yelling at you, some of the worst things you'd ever hear. But the shock and awe of that evening was I had a couple of the kids that I ended up coaching soccer with, and not knowing who I was or thinking I was just a, again, random uniform on the corner, and the words that came out of their mouths, and knowing that I was a coach, but as well, I knew who they were, and I've coached from a young level these kids, and yeah, it was like a self-reflection, like really, like that's what you think of this because you're getting ignited by something that's happened in another, again, country, and they're just kind of following the energy of that group. But then again, throughout the night, everybody was kind of had that energy, but then you saw groups like, okay, now they're waiting kind of for that media moment, right? We had media groups following this group throughout Jasper Ave, up 104 Ave, across the high level. They are looking for that trigger point or that flashpoint event in order for it to be that item on the media that's going to, again, sell the clicks, sell whatever it's going to be on that aspect. And really, by the end of the evening, the people that actually went to that BLM event initially down at the Ledge, versus kind of what we've seen progressing through the evening, it wasn't the people that were actually supporting the cause or whatever the vision was down at the grounds. It was definitely something more, I won't say nefarious, but it was definitely something that they just been part of the group and they went with their own agenda to basically push their different types of beliefs, or just cause disorder, and that's what they're looking for. And that's the clips you're getting at the end of the night of seeing this stuff.
Billy brings up a good point that the public needs to understand. Like, first responders are not robots. We're parents, we're siblings, we're coaches, we're part of your community, your neighborhood. So when this stuff happens, like obviously Billy brings that up, like it affected him because he's a coach of these kids. Like, and Billy was there to protect the public and make sure the public was safe. Billy was not part of the event, other than that he was there in order to make sure everyone was safe and they could have a peaceful protest.
When I'm looking at a lot of these events and again talking with people, or even again family, friends, people I run into in my own community, and they start talking about policing and especially my role within public safety, and I'm like, it comes down to it. I'm like, we are supporting and managing behaviors. We're taking bad behaviors out, we're removing them because those bad behaviors can fester into other things. We're not policing your beliefs and all that. You're allowed to have your beliefs, but when the behaviors change and the mannerisms change, that's when we actually have to have that reaction to follow up in order to make it safe for everyone. Again, protesters, counter protesters, we're there to make those events safe. And when the behaviors change, that's when we actually have to deal with the interaction and dealing with people.
And as a service, we can't be scared to defend ourselves. So you look at the encampment at the University of Alberta Hospital, the false narrative that was put out after that event. Like, I demanded to go on the media until I finally convinced the chief to put me in front of the cameras with all of our videos that we had to prove all that false narrative that was going around about the police being heavy-handed, us using munitions, which we never used. So it was good that we were able to do that. So we got to get the message out there that no, what you're hearing is not what took place. So,
well, I certainly go on about media enough on here and just making sure that they put out the right message, right? That they're telling the whole truth and both sides to the story, or however many sides there are to a story. So I can appreciate that. We're just at the end of our time. I want to thank you guys for coming on here today. I think this would be really informative for people, even within our own service. There's a lot of people who don't truly understand what we do or how it's conducted and how this all comes together. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for being on here today.
Thanks for having us, Nathan. This was
Thanks,
this was
Nathan.
awesome.
Appreciate it.